Vallecillo, who is visiting from Honduras and has been with us all week this week, and is the artist, one of the two artists who created the project Cuidado, which we're showing in High Ceiling Gallery. And I hope that you'll spend time with that project if you haven't already. Adán has been working at the intersection of issues of politics, sociology, visual art, materiality, the political, and what it means to be in community with people for several decades, a couple of decades, based out of Honduras. His works has been shown in exhibitions at major museums around the world and in biennials, artist-run spaces, and also in informal spaces, which is something we both share an interest in, the kinds of spaces that are your home, the street, the school, the prison, spaces in which this work means different things. And so it's been a special privilege to have him here with us this week at the Blaffer, in part because we've been spending our time with the team thinking about what a museum can do with people in the world, what it means to be a museum in the world at this time, and how our team can also connect differently with intention with different parts of our city and our student population as well. And so we've been enjoying these conversations. As we were thinking about this talk, we thought, Adán and I have known each other for quite a long time, for about 10 years. We met in my apartment in Guatemala City over dinner in the patio, and we've continued those conversations over these years. And we thought this would be a fun chance to have the conversation we've been having for 10 years, but with all of you. And so this is meant to be an informal conversation among friends. We wrote down some ideas that we want to think through with you, but we also invite you to participate with us in thinking through some of these ideas. And so we'll have plenty of time to talk at the end, but also I would say feel free to interrupt us and let's share this space of intimacy and of ideas in the same way as if we were sharing dinner. There's food out there, I'm sorry it's not in here, but the same way as if we were having a dinner together is what we'd like to imagine. We thought we would start actually with the idea of friendship, because we're talking about our own relationship as colleagues and friends over the past decade. And Adán and I have spent a lot of time thinking about la economía de amistad, the economy of friendship, what it means to be working together and to be engaged in relationship with artists, with curators, what it means to be in this art world, whatever that is, as friends. And so I'd like to start there. I'd like to ask Adán to think with us out loud about how friendship works in your practice, or the reverse, how your practice intersects with friendships, and what trust means in your work. I want to think about trust a little bit. Quiero pensar en confianza. ¿Va?
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for the Blaffer team also for all this support. I am very excited to be here and around this week talking about all this topic that Laura mentioned with other people, especially with the people from the team of the Blaffer Museum. And it's a pleasure to be here and talking with you now. As Laura mentioned, we have several years that we meet each other, no? 10 years ago in Guatemala City. And for the first time, I mentioned Laura, for me it was a little bit strange when I saw this gringa coming to Guatemala and invite artists and friends to come to the house and talking and sharing there, because it's a very usual dynamic in Central America, no? This kind of net, ¿no? Esta clase de red and this all connection with other artists from Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Belize, um, because these scenes are very small, and I think so the necessity to know what happened in each country and the necessity to um, to make collective projects without the support of institutions, um, push these collectives of artists to working together. And Laura came to Guatemala and she opened her house to to talk with the artists, no? And in that moment, I start to be in contact with you since that moment, no? And and we has been thinking about how this other kind of more slow process in the relationship to build projects is important now more than the past because now all the time we are running, no, and we are doing fast projects because the pressure of the marketing, the pressure of the system is strong, and and we feel the necessity, no, to going more slow, and Laura is one of these curator who take the necessary time, no, to build the ideas, to talk, to be dialoguing, dialoguing the process, and it's more linked to this relationship, friendship relationship. It's not it's not it's ¿cómo se dice? No es habitual, it's not common, no? To have this kind of relationship with a curator. And I think so, this, ¿cómo se dice? Rhythm is important in our relationship. And we spent, for example, 3 years working in this project on the border. And we will talk about that also. I don't know if you can mention it and other
Yeah,
things.
I like what you're saying about slowness, and I think everyone on my team and every friend that's in the room knows I'm very slow. I'm bad at email. I'm run late for things. You all know this about me. But I think the slowness of relationship is so important, and so you take the time that's needed for a relationship, and that's the only reason that I still work in the arts is because I enjoy that time. But I also think, you're talking about the shared dinners, the kind of convivencia, the shared living together that happens at the dinner table as being part of a practice, right? And not a practice that I'm theorizing or that it wasn't a kind of strategic move. It was just like I like having people over for dinner. And then these kind of networks of artists start unfolding, right? And start cooking for me because I'm a terrible cook, and start showing up with offerings at different times of day. And I think, we were talking earlier today about what we wanted to share with you. The moment that I moved to Guatemala City was a moment for me of profound disillusionment with the academy, with the academic, with the institutional spaces that I was watching. And to move into a space where there were no institutional spaces, there were really none. There were no commercial galleries when I moved there. There was one or two, but there were really that was not part of it. There was not a kind of art program at a university. There was not a museum of contemporary art. And so what was so exciting about that is that artists were actually moving quite quickly. So me as a slow person, I was really impressed by how quickly artists could respond, right? That they didn't care about the calendar of exhibitions at a museum or the timeline of art fairs. It was like, oh, I made a thing and I'm going to take it out and put it on the street and people will see it and then we'll talk about it, right? And that immediacy was really interesting to me, particularly in the political moment. So in that moment in Guatemala, there were all of these protests happening to remove the president and vice president from office for corruption. There's a kind of mass movement. And when you're living in a place where there's a lot to critique, which maybe we all are, I don't know, I think that immediacy was really rewarding, that we weren't waiting 2 years to make a project that would respond to the moment. We were kind of having dinner together and then going out and doing a thing. And that kind of soothed some of the disillusionment that I felt at that time and continue to feel in many spaces. Yeah. And it was an art space that was my home
Yes.
also. And so there's a kind of vulnerability, and that people gave me a lot of feedback that it felt very naive in some ways to open the door to my home in downtown Guatemala City for art events or for dinners and things, because that isn't a place where you leave your door open. And so I think that's an interesting place for us to start. You
Yes.
know?
And it's linked. This process is linked to the trust also.
It's yeah.
Because that is right. In Central America, we are very um, we reacted very fast to the political environment, and all the time the artists are reacting, no, immediately to this political change. But
The rhythm.
the rhythm of the processes are very slow, and in that sense the trust is so important, because you are not ¿cómo se dice? Impaciente. You are not
Impatient.
impatient not to have a response. You know, if you trust in these people, in this collective dynamic, you know the things are going fluent, but by their own rhythm.
Mm. And I think one of the things that's exciting about having Adán here right now is being able to think about that model of being in my apartment and sharing dinner, and think about it from now within a very large university and a museum space. So what does it mean then? What can we learn from that apartment space and bring into something that's more institutional and more rigid in some ways, right?
That was a question for you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What's the question?
How is now working
Yeah.
in other kind of in other kind of situation, no? Because it's not the same when you are working with this independent artistic project. Is the sense of the time is different, no?
Yeah.
Because you know sometimes you must to react immediately, but you don't have the pressure of the market, for example, or the schedule of the institutions, no, or you are not working with these huge budgets, no, these big projects, but in the context of the institution is different. It's so different. But it's very interesting that you maintain, you conserve some things from this model that came from the friendship economy. No?
What things do you see?
For example, the trust, and you, as you mentioned it, you don't push to have fast answers, or to has fast results. And for example, if the process is not going so well, you take the time to rethink the process, and you are not stressful with the idea to change the way of the things.
Yeah, I mean, when we brought Cuidado, we thought that it would have a very robust performance aspect this summer, that we would do all of this outreach, that we had this kind of plan of how it would unfold. And for many reasons, it didn't unfold as we imagined. And so we had a phone call this summer in August where we said, okay, this isn't what we imagined, but what do we want to be doing? Well, we kind of want to be doing these conversations. We kind of want to spend time with Adán thinking about what this museum could do in relation to the communities that we serve. And first of all, we have to define what those communities are, right? So slowing it down, I really believe in moving slowly in order to kind of think through. I don't think we're meant to move as quickly as we do. I don't think we're built to move as quickly as we have to. And so, yeah, I don't want to dwell on that too long. I want to move on to the border projects that we did, because I think you'll see some of how that collaboration unfolds. So I think early in the pandemic, Adán reached out to me just to check in and how are you doing? And I had just gotten this job in El Paso at the Rubin Center. And Adán was the first artist I invited to make a project there. And there's a few, actually, this slide is from the Rubin Center show that we did together. This one also, you'll see a couple of images. But we invited Adán to do a project which would be the first solo exhibition of his work at a museum in the US. And so we made a solo, really a small retrospective, I would say, mid-career retrospective, which we called Tiempo Libre, a free time, which is perhaps relevant to what we're talking about with time. But then, Adán, part of his practice is curation. He does a lot of curating and a lot of organizing. He's an organizer of a performance festival in Honduras, but also curates other artists. And so I invited him, and he said no. And then it took a while to convince him, but I invited him to co-curate a show with me alongside his retrospective. And then he also wanted to do a local research project in Ciudad Juarez. And so we did 3 projects. Yeah, it's this one. We did 3 projects all at once. A group show that we co-curated, a solo show of Adán's work, and a site-specific investigation in Juarez. And I think that those. It's interesting to think about all 3 of those as a reflection of Adán's broader practice. No, can you say a bit about your experience on the border in relation to your studio practice? Like, how did that move things forward in your thinking? What did it change for you? What was it like to be in the US making a show?
Well, I born in the border of Nicaragua and Honduras, and all the time I I have this fascination with the life on the borders, because it's so different than the rest of the countries. These these spaces are really complex, and the interaction of the people is so different than the mainland, no? And when Laura invited me to do these projects on the border, uh, it was a huge challenge for me, because it's the most ambitious project that I have been involved on the past, no, and and it was amazing moving every day through the border, and going to Del Paso and going to Ciudad Juarez at the same day sometimes, and I spend time in the both sites working in El Paso in this exhibition, this solo show, and Laura was more involved in the Kokurei, the project the project that we curated together. And I went 1 year before, no, to traveling around the Valle de Juarez, and to meet some academics from the university there, la Universidad de Texas, and we were working with several people, no, with a lot of people in the two sides, collaborating and traveling, and the people in Ciudad Juárez, in Azul Arena is a, col, a, col, a collective project, no, running by artists, and they they were was they were helping us to find activists on the area who are working um, with the water rights, and they participated involving in this discussion as a part of the installation and in Ciudad Juárez, and we produce some site-specific pieces also, no? The chocolate piece, the um, the filters, remember,
Sí.
pieces also, and that was a big challenge.
If you haven't spent time in El Paso, Juarez, one thing that's interesting about that space is that that's where the water treaties between Mexico and the U.S. are argued, right, or negotiated, I should say. And if you don't know this, it's something you should know, which is that the U.S. Sends a water bill to Mexico. Basically, there's an agreement about how much water we can use and they can use, and because it's a space that is marked by drought, there's not enough water. Mexico often can't pay for as much water as they need, and so then they live in this water debt with the U.S. And water is its own. I mean, it's its own politics, its own reality, and in El Paso, of course, you turn on your faucet for the most part, not in every neighborhood, but you turn on your faucet and you get water for the most part. And in Juarez, you often turn on your faucet and there's no water. And so the imbalance is very striking because they're two cities that are connected. I mean, they're really just divided by a wall. They're right beside each other. It's one city, but it's split. And the water was the main question. And I don't know if I go back, I might ruin the rhythm. But Adán made this piece, which is a full installation of all that hay was brought in, all that alfalfa was brought in, the cotton and the pecans, all of these local products that use a lot of water. And he made these into these squares, just like Donald Judd's squares. Like we're talking about West Texas minimalism, but with alfalfa, pecans, cotton, right? And for Adán, the best part of that project was actually, we were just talking about this because I had a very different experience. It was the conversation he had with the activists. So he made a video piece with water activists and Juarez. And for me, it was the critique of minimalism. It was like, what are you're making cubes out of cotton in the border. That's so fascinating, right? Especially because that's a place where Donald Judd went and where art pilgrims go all the time to visit the kind of very sacred seeming minimalist chapels of Judd and his friends. And so what does it mean to kind of take that and turn it on its head and make it out of these agricultural products that are sucking all the water out of this landscape that's already a desert, right? And what does that mean for minimalism? Like what kind of critique is that for minimalism? And what does minimalism allow us to do there as well? So I thought, that the place of that investigation, I think, is really important to think about. And that, I mean, really that brings me to what's quite interesting about Adán's work is it's one of many things, but it's relationship to art history. And so I think we've talked a lot about this. Adán riffs off of minimalism, riffs off of the situationists, off of abstract expressionism, but almost always in this language of the everyday. So what you see behind you are these air filters that come out of cars, right? But they become abstract sculptures when you put them all together on the wall in a museum. they become completely abstract, but they tell the story of where people were driving. And where they were driving, the air quality was very, very bad. And so the filters are very, very dirty. And so they leave the trace of the place, but with the language of abstraction. And I think that I'd love to hear you talk about art history as a reference for you, because it's not just simply a critique.
No.
It's really a deep engagement with what art history can offer.
Yes, thank you, Laura. It's because for me, the aesthetical results are so important, and and the art history, especially the tradition of the minimalism or povera art from Italy, or the situationistic art, and another manifestation, especially from the abstraction, are important, has reference. Malevich, no, the Russian constructivists, and or el neoconcreto movement from Brazil, no. But for me, this link with the land, with the soil, with the territory is more geopolitical interesting. It's more linked to the how the land, the history of the territories it's involved by all these um, inequalities histories, no? And but in the aesthetical result, I don't know, maybe because for me art is an excuse to dialoguing with the people, and I don't know, I feel that these more simple forms are more direct to start a dialogue. I don't know. I think sometimes I think that is the reason I am going to this source of knowledge in the art history, because I enjoy this dialogue, no, with the art history in these very simple forms. How the challenge is always how I can connect these simple forms with these complex backgrounds.
So, and you're seeing some of this in the images that are behind me. So, um, we can talk about a couple of specific works, but what you can see are these kind of pared down geometries, like this kind of emphasis on materiality. We're referencing in this work, directly referencing minimalism, but making it out of chocolate. So, what is the economy of chocolate? Where is it coming from? This kind of carpet that this woman is dancing on is made of patches from bicycles, no?
No, canvas.
From canvas. See?
Mm-hmm.
These are the ones that just passed were cigar made from the making of cigars, which come from where Adán is from. These, I love this piece. This is a ball that looks like a popcorn ball, but it's made of teeth that were extracted by U.S. missionaries going to rural indigenous communities to help with dental work in Honduras. But the teeth are marked by disease that is often associated with American junk food, which is a delicacy in these communities. This is a large work made out of tires, but could be, could be a Carl Andre, is really riffing off of that language. And I would say when this comes up, this is Tres Tristes Trópicos. Adán does the same with philosophy. So he's looking at Claude Lévi-Strauss and really thinking about Occidental, Western philosophy, but from Central America. And that tension between knowing the philosophy and the art history of other parts of the world taking it, riffing off of it, turning it on its head, using materials from everyday life and from your environment, I think is what's really beautiful and interesting about this body of work. See. We've been talking a bit about the natural world, and that I think is another important influence for what Adán is making and thinking about. And the natural world brings me to questions of extractivism, no, of how we're using the natural world, consuming it, destroying it. And I wonder if you could speak to that tension in the work. Where does your interest come from? What's going on in Honduras that makes that a relevant question for you? No?
Yes, thank you, Laura. See, I mentioned it before, the importance of the cycles of production, circulations, and consume in my researches, but link it with the focus in the trade inequality on the world. These ideas came from this economy, ¿cómo se dice? Economista,
Economist?
economist, Egyptian economics. His name is Amir Amin. He has been talking about the inequality of the exchange of commodities in the world, how exist countries that produce raw materials, and there are other countries who are producing more manufactured materials, no? And this exchange generate inequality on the world. And coming from a country as Honduras, no, that export cocoa beans, bananas, coffee, all of these raw materials, no, and going to the field to talk with the people who are working in this on these plantations or places, is for me is important to understand how this cycle, no, of production, circulations, and consume, for me is more had more sense when I am going to talk with the people directly who are suffering directly the inequality of this exchange, because they are the producers, but they are not received the the right, or the el precio justo, ¿cómo se dice? The fair trade, no? And I don't know if that response to your question. And there is an image of the project of Bonanzas Ephemeras is a good example of the extractivism in my work. It's about the minery in Honduras, and it was a collaboration with the dancer Irma Valladares, who is dancing on the paintings and the paintings are on this land that was exploited, no, by the minery, originally from United States, and then they changed the names and the patent, no, to the other countries, to, ¿cómo se dice? To burlar la justicia, to hide, no, all these inequalities and human rights violaciones, ¿cómo se? Violations. Thank you.
That work to me also, the one with the dancer. So it's at a local gathering spot where people would go on the weekends, take a picnic, wash your clothes, spend time with family. And so it was a community space that was quite rural. And so the dancer is engaging with the work and dancing in this kind of river or kind of water landscape. I don't know the right language, kind of the water gathering place. But also one thing I love, ¿cómo? Like yeah, like in English, thermal water, yeah, like a hot springs. But the thing I love about this work that we had a lot of questions about in the show was that it was really just made for that community, right? So it wasn't something where an art audience was invited to see this performance, but the community was kind of around when the performance was happening, when the video was made. And it was really, I love projects that are really only for a couple of people. I think that there's something so beautiful about that gesture. Um, and that brings me to the idea of community. I think you spoke so beautifully on Tuesday about dignity as um, a thing of beauty, dignity as a politic. And I think that the way that you define community, the way you respond to community, the way you create work for specific groups of people, for communities to engage with, the way you turn to them to listen is something we have to talk about today, even though we have a few more minutes and then we'll open it up for questions. But that relationship with audience and community is central to how you work. And I wonder how you define that, how you describe that when we're sitting here in a museum.
No, thank you. You mentioned some things linked with that.
Mhm.
For example, in this project, Bonanzas Ephemeras, Irma, the dancer, she has been interpreting the effects of the minery on the brain, on the including the whole body, no. And in my case, I has been interpreting the effects of the minery on the bodies, but more in the abstract way on these paintings. These paintings are made by using canvas patches, but each patch had painting, and it's linked to this other project, but this one is using rubber patches, and the community from San Ignacio is the name of the community. They has been reactions about the results or the effects of the minery in their own bodies and the bodies of the nature, also the bodies of the plants, of the rivers, and they are very involved with fighting on the streets, protesting for all this inequality and for all this exploitation and extractivism. And for me it's a privilege, no, to have this opportunity to think about this situation together with the dancer and together with the community. And there is a video of the performance, but in some of my projects the anonimato, ¿cómo se dice? Thank you. The anonym, anonymity of the people is important because they are linked to the political fight, and it's important to hide the identity of the people. Or the people sometimes they have fears. In the case, for example, of the home attendants of the project of Cuidado, the reason that we decide to hide their faces is because for their own security. No? And in the case of Bonanzas Ephemeras, The video of the performance was filmed only the dancer around the paintings, not the people from the community who were around the performance, as you mentioned.
I think that's really interesting as a decision because I think so often in museums, what we're trying to do is get so many people in. Like, how many people can we get into the museum? And actually, sometimes that's not the right thing. Sometimes the right thing is, for me, is slowing down and giving space to the people who most need to be there, or who the project is for. No, and so it's a different ethic in some ways.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it is linked to the dignity
Mhm.
because when we are thinking together with the communities, and when as an artist you are open to the participation of the people of the community on your own process, no? Immediately the process belong to the collective, and to have this presentation for the community of San Ignacio in the middle of these spring waters, that they are going there every weekend to boil it eggs, for example, and they share the eggs with the rest of the families, and to bring to bring them this performance presentation with Irma, who are involved in the activist fight also. It was so beautiful when they recognized Irma. When Irma arrived to the community the first time, they didn't know that Irma was the dancer of the performance. They recognized Irma on the street, on the fight, as an activist. And I don't know, all these possibilities, no, when you are putting together this kind of people, is like another form to build dignity also against the power, no?
I think this is a really good moment to ask you to join us in conversation. Is there something you'd like to ask or say? A comment that you'd like to share while we pause here? I know it's getting late on a Thursday night and there's a lot going on, but I invite you to join us now. What would you like to talk about? Uh-huh.
The name of the project is Tiempo Libre,
Free time.
free time, and Laura and me decide to rename the show in El Paso Tiempo Libre because this performance. We invite to the people in the central part of Mexico City to, ¿cómo se dice? Masticar,
To chew gum.
to chew gum, and then put the gum on this board, and they build this collective painting with the gums, no? But coming from this collective action, it was before the pandemic. I don't know when. Now, probably now in Mexico and Latin America, that people don't have a lot of prejudice, ¿cómo se dice? Prejuicios,
Prejudice.
prejudice about to share, no, these kind of actions. And we have this this casting for the guy who will invite the people on the park, and normally he's selling a kind of mushroom medicine, ¿cómo se dice? Medicinal,
See, a medicinal mushroom.
medicinal mushroom, normally.
So,
Hongo michoacano.
so
You
there was
know.
There was this guy with a megaphone
Mm-hmm.
telling people to come. And they
Yes.
come, 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 and then giving
He's the
gum.
performer of the.
He's the performer. And it's something that in the US we don't do as much as gathering in the plaza, like a central plaza downtown, which is very common in colonial Latin American cities and in other parts of the world. In the US, we don't often have those plazas in the same way, or we don't use them in the same way, but they're gathering spaces. People go and there's markets and there's people selling things and blah, blah, blah. And so to think about what we do in our free time and what we do collectively in these shared spaces, I think is what's really interesting about that project, because the plaza is a space of political protest. But it's a space of daily life. It's a space of like going to hang out with your friends, going on dates, but also having protests. And I think Adán and I have had all these conversations about living under capitalism and how little free time we have and how it's taken away from us so often. So how do we spend the free time that we have? And in this case, he asked people to make a work of art together out of chewing gum. Yeah.
The video is very funny. It's in my website if
Yeah, the
you
video
want
is
to.
great. Para nosotros que estamos en universidades, ¿cómo cultivamos ese sentido de comunidad? ¿Cómo podemos desde el museo cultivar con estudiantes ese sentido de comunidad y de compartir tiempo y proyectos? ¿Va?
Thank you. I don't know that take long time, no, but the first step in I think is listening a lot, listening and listening a lot, and then you can I don't know propose, but together after listening, no, how can we find ways together and sin importar si va a salir bien o no, no?
Without worrying about whether it turns out right or not, right?
Because it's more important the experience, no? The experience to build together process ways.
It's a challenge. I mean, we've been talking about this with the team all week and back and forth also, just the kind of sense of being so tired and how hard it is to find energy and to ask other people to find energy and time, right? And how reliant we are on being online instead of being together. Like being physically together is not a thing that we're doing as much, perhaps. And I don't think there's an easy answer, no? No hay una respuesta muy fácil, ¿va? It's a challenge. Sí.
But it's a challenge that is, ¿cómo se dice? Que vale la pena tomar el riesgo, ¿no?
It's worth taking the risk on it, no? Yeah. Through acts of listening. I mean, I think listening has been the thing we've been thinking about too, is how do you actively listen? And then how do you find people who have energy and time to bring to the table? Because you can't be the only one generating the energy and time, right? You can't be the only one putting out the energy. Yeah, because you'll burn out.
But
Yeah.
it's the power of the curiosity of from the human, no? From
And
the people.
the invitation, right? We've been talking about how we say, can we count on you to show up? Like the kind of invitation you make, and doing the very personal invitation versus the kind of mediated invitation. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Roberto. Mhm. Uh-huh. ¿Quieres preguntarlo en español también?
Sí. Sí, gracias. Sí, eso lo entendí. Más bien me estaba preguntando por qué, why, no, why you are, eh, what do you, why you think is, they are, ¿cómo se relacionados?
Related. Sí.
Related. This is the point, our dream of modernity, because our countries has been uh, fascinating with this idea of progress, of modernity, and the tradition of for example, that came from the art history is in the aesthetical result is an in a in a modern style, in the modern result, no? And we are very habituated to this aesthetic, no? And you mentioned it, a very important point in my practice because the reference to this form came from this fascination with the modernity and the dream of modernity, the dream of the progress.
I think there's a sense of humor too, no?
Yes, it is.
I think there's a playfulness sometimes, not always, but sometimes too, that you're engaging. Like the popcorn ball, for example, like that's funny. But it can be very abstract and very grotesque at the same time. And so, thinking about the qualities of modernity, also with those lenses of maybe it's a good thing to have a sense of humor about modernity. Maybe it's also grotesque. But I think there's a kind of emotional quality that he's playing with within those lenses of history. Yeah.